Welcome to Innovation Crossroad. I'm Alan Cui from Boston Ventures. We are striving to build stronger bridge between Australian and Chinese innovation landscape, helping our ecosystem better understand the opportunities and the pathway for cooperation. So today, we invited one of the most active influencer in Australian innovation system, the founder of Hyperman Media, Dickie Currer. Welcome, Dickie.
Thank you, Alan. Very excited to be here.
Yeah, so recently I saw you were awarded the Victorian Startup Ecosystem Hero of Year 2025. So first, congratulations. I'll probably start with this first. So can you please tell us a little bit more about this award and how do you see yourself as a hero?
Thank you, Alan. I'm no hero, but yeah, it was great to be recognised by my peers. So the award actually is given out by the Victorian Startup Agency, so the government-backed agency, which is called LaunchVic. And so it's they recognise, I guess, the best startups and the best innovators and people who really support and grow the Victorian ecosystem. And I think one of their big metrics is around growing Victoria globally. So actually was nominated for the award 2 years ago. I was a runner-up to one of my good friends, Emily Casey, who is another I'm sure you know community leader.
Absolutely.
So I was happy to lose to her. But I think 2 years on, what has changed for me enormously is that now I'm a huge advocate for Victoria, Melbourne, and Australian startups and tech and innovation across the globe. So I think that's why this year I was recognised and was grateful enough to be the recipient of the award.
Nice, Dickie. So is that because so basically you are now looking more globally for the Australian startup? Is that because I remember last year, I think it's last year, you wrote an article talking about Australia has a scale-up problem.
Yeah.
So is that related to the scale-up problem? And do you still think it exists? And how do you think it can be solved?
Yeah, I think I think going back a step, I think generally one of the biggest challenges for Australian culture in general, but taking it on a micro level, the innovation culture. I always say, so I'm from the UK originally, right? I moved here 10 years ago. And I always say that Australia, the positives and negatives of Australia are basically the same. So its geographical place in the corner of the world is actually really positive, right? It's great. It means that we've got, we're safe and secure from the rest of kind of global problems. We're able to have our own supply chain because of the size of the country. We're able to kind of operate in isolation from sometimes the problems that you have when you've got borders and overpopulation and all those things, right? It's also one of the negatives in terms of culture, though. It means that we are kind of isolated. It means that it is hard to travel to. It means that the time zones can be painful for people, right? So when I first moved to Australia, I first started to notice that happened generally. And so it was important to work out how we could connect better globally. And then working in the innovation space, which is something I've been doing for about 4 years now, I noticed that problem also existed. That is, for a lot of founders are head down building, kind of in an echo chamber of where they live. And that works also on a state level, right? Mm-hmm. Like I find I've met a lot of founders in Melbourne where we're based, and they don't really connect outside of Melbourne with the wider Australian ecosystem. And if they do look to go global, they look to go to the US firstly because it's, obviously one of the biggest economies. It's also culturally the same as Australia, so it's an easier, I guess, adoption and growth market. But they and maybe the UK and Europe after that. But then there's not a lot of education around other global markets. So that's what really has inspired the work I do at Hyperman Media. We connect global startup ecosystems and I really focus on the areas that people don't know about. There's enough content about where to go in the US, how to scale to the US, how to grow your business. There's less about how to work with China, India, two of the world's biggest countries of population, but also emerging economies like Southeast Asia, places like Thailand and Vietnam and Indonesia, which are ultimately a lot closer to us in Australia than the US and Europe, right? So to answer the question about the scale-up problem, yeah, I think I don't know if the stats have changed, but the article I posted about 18 months ago was basically saying that I think it was 97% of Australian companies are small by definition companies.
That's right.
Whereas it's something like 65 to 66 across most of the big economies, US, UK. So we have really good small business economy, really struggle to scale.
Yeah.
And there's a concept called the mid-market crisis, which I'll talk briefly about, which is a bunch of scientists or researchers somewhere have come up with this social, I guess, sentiment around scale and innovation globally, right? So if you've got a country between 20 and 50 million population, you can drop into this mid-market crisis, which basically means that you've got a big enough local population and economy to build a good-sized business so that you don't think about going globally from day one. And then when you do, you've lost the kind of foot race to someone else across, or you've built structures which don't help you to support to go global.
Yeah.
Countries like, say, New Zealand or Israel, the market's so small, you have to go global straight away, right?
That's
New
right.
Zealand's population's 5 million. Australians 25, 26, which means that you can build an amazing company, and then by the time you think about scaling, you've kind of stuck in Australia. And so I think that's where the scale-up problem comes from, and that's where I'm kind of inspired to help put more resource and education to help support people to see different markets, to scale into different markets, to help solve that problem, and vis-a-vis to help, I guess, Australian innovation go across the world.
Yeah, that's great. So it's basically like as a founder of the Hyperman Media, you kind of hype them up to encourage them to global at the very beginning, right?
Yeah, exactly that. Like the Hype Man Media, it came about from sort of 2 or 3 years ago. People started calling me the Hype Man for Australian tech and innovation. So what a lot of I was doing was really focused on showcasing the best of Australia, working out ways we could make it stronger, and sort of really telling the stories about our amazing startups. I think it's now become a dual business, which has that focus, helping to export Australian innovation, but also help to import global ideas, global opportunities, because that ultimately has the same goal, which is more Australian startups worldwide.
So it's also about like bringing the ideas to Australia. So you just mentioned.
Yeah. I think you're probably aware, but I've been doing a lot of work recently, like I say, in China, India, and Southeast Asia. I've been working with a Chinese accelerator program to help support Australian startups go to China. I've been working with a couple of different programs in India and Southeast Asia. So a lot of the work I do now is about, educating Australian startups about the opportunities that exist there. And so that's kind of the other part of, I guess, the business model, which is by opening up those opportunities, that helps to showcase more Australian startups to go global, right? So
yeah. Is that the reason prompted you to go to China several months ago?
Yeah, so I went to China for 3 weeks in March. Look, I would say for me, I grew up.
Is that the first time you been in China?
It was the first time in mainland China. Yeah, so I've been.
Oh, mainland China. Yeah, okay.
First time in mainland. Look, Alan, I grew up with. I got bored in Atlas when I was 8 years old by my godmother Sally, and I could tell you by the age of 10 years old, I could tell you every capital city, every flag, I was a huge geography nerd, and I still am. I can still tell you all those things. So I grew up with the ambition to travel to every country in the world. At a certain point in life, I realized that might be too hard. I don't want to go to the most dangerous places, and risk my life. So, and it's obviously quality over quantity as well. So I'd always wanted to go to China my entire life.
Yeah.
And I was just waiting for the right moment. And I've been working for the last couple of years with a couple of Chinese organizations in Australia as I start to build out the Hype Man media mission. And it just felt like the right time. They just announced the 30-day visa free for Australians.
Yep.
I'd got a few connections with the Chinese government through startup work I was doing. And the real driver behind it, I guess I was always planning to go, but the real driver behind it for me was as I started to work with Chinese organizations, I wanted to actually feel what it was like to be in China.
Mm.
I feel like, and I'm sure you agree, um, there is an opinion of what China is, based on what we read in the media, based on the stories, based on what we consume, based on um, propaganda ultimately, and PR, right?
Yeah,
Whether
yeah.
that be negative or positive, probably predominantly negative in the West. And so for me, it's like I wanted to actually go and feel what it felt like to be there. I don't
Yep.
think you can understand a place until you've seen it. And
You be
and
there.
I
Yeah.
for me personally, I see life as a jigsaw puzzle, right? The
Mm.
more pieces that you can put together, the bit more of the bigger picture that you see. And for me, that is cultures and countries. And the more cultures I experience, the more I feel like I understand the world.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
You can take that one if you want.
Yeah, yeah, I love
just,
that. I
just,
love that.
just,
And
just credit me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Will do, will do. Dickie, so I know you have been working with the AKs Henry and also other Chinese business here.
Yeah.
So how and is there any still there any things that surprise you when you actually go to China or contradict what you actually thought?
Yeah, I think um, it's a different way of working, right? And I think
Hmm.
that takes a while to get used to. And that's honestly, that is the same across every culture, right? Like I came from the UK to Australia, and I felt that difference, even though we were two countries which shared a
Yeah,
language
yeah.
and a history,
Same Queen,
Um,
same King.
yeah, exactly, right. So like, there's a lot of similarities. I noticed that my partner's Indian, my fiance, and so we talk about this quite a lot about the integration between cultures, and so there's definitely parts of working in China that surprised me. This time when I went to visit for the first time, I knew it was going to be. So I think traveling there was easier than I thought it was going to be.
Hmm.
Uh, I knew that there is a budding, tech and innovation culture, but it
Yep.
blew me away how fast paced that is and the energy that exists in China. That was unbelievable. And in terms of people, I found people unbelievably nice. Whether that was walking into a restaurant, cafe, bar, or that was working with people in the startup world, everyone was really welcoming. The hospitality culture, and this exists across the whole of Asia, I think, really
Yeah, yeah,
is.
yeah.
People were so
For,
nice and welcoming. So I
for India, probably the same, right?
India the same, and Southeast Asia. Like I was in Vietnam last year for quite a while. South Korea, again, very very similar. But yeah, I think it's just the ways of working, right? I think that's
Yeah.
probably the hardest part. And even working with Chinese people in Australia, it is different. It is different, and it's learning. It's like building a muscle, and the more you do it, the better you get at it, and the more you understand it, right? And for me personally, I thrive off that experience. I really enjoy it.
Have you met any founders or investors while you were in China?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I found the founder ecosystem there amazing. I feel like there's less emphasis. I think in Australia, a lot of time it's about being at events, being seen, building your PR, building your kind of like network. The Chinese founders I met were just head down
Okay.
working, um, which I find was something. And again, I've got a limited sample size because I was only there for 3 weeks. But the people I met, it just seemed like it was um, a different kind of founder.
Yeah. Okay. So have you observed like for example, something Chinese called 996 or 007, this kind of a working culture there?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. What do you think of that?
As a founder myself, I think that that's my life, 20 years ago, and even for now, like I'm building up Boston Ventures. Still, I see it as a as a startup. So I work probably more than 996, probably a more 007 kind of thing.
See, it's interesting, right? Because I think this is one of the biggest cultural differences in Australia. Again, the best thing about Australia is often the worst thing about Australia, right? So I think we're a lifestyle country,
Yeah.
which means, when I first moved there, I remember 4 p.m. in Sydney, people finished work and we went for a surf, right? Or we had a couple of beers. At the end of the day, it's a Friday. Let's really invest in our leisure time, and that's great. I think that's a really, really great thing. I think people put physical and mental health first more than other cultures around the world,
Yeah.
and that's including the UK. But it does mean it's probably bad for the economy, right? So I thought we've got all the recipes here for a really entrepreneurial country. You've got all the resources, small business, high, high average income and GDP. But I think the opposite side to that is we've got a lifestyle culture, which means people don't have the same hustle. I think it's a good thing, generally speaking. There's a balance somewhere, right?
Yeah, it's a balance. Yeah.
I've got a couple of clients I work with in South Korea, and sometimes they'll message me at 10 p.m. local time in South Korea, and I think like that's just it feels like it's too much for me.
Yeah,
I feel
that's
like
right.
there is as someone that experienced burnout in a lot of different ways, because I'm a founder, so I always thinking about my business. I try really hard to build a structured life where I think I really prioritize health as well, and I think that's one of the dangerous things sometimes with that excessive work culture. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You definitely need to be balanced. Otherwise, it's not sustainable not saying long run, probably midterm, even not sustainable. I agree with that.
yeah.
Yeah. So while you are in China, is there anything like you see specifically like opportunities for Australian startups that can engage with the Chinese market?
Yeah, I think there's a few verticals that work really well. And again, I think you've helped me to validate this with the work you do at Boson Ventures. But I feel like Australian health tech is something that I've seen, and that came up in basically every conversation I had in China. People were interested in how to help engage Australian health techs to come to China. That was, yeah, time and again something that people really saw that we were really strong in Australia and in Melbourne as well. So
That's right.
I think there's absolutely a bridge and a gateway to kind of pull together there.
Oh, nice. That definitely something we're working on, and that's also the reason we moved back to Melbourne. Um, is there any you work with lots of so through let's just say a case and that's what's that called Nexus
Yeah.
program. So you work with several companies that want to or interested in going into China. So what do you think are their main motivations and what's their typical concerns?
I think it's I think it's a couple of things. I think a lot of time it's diaspora who live in Australia but have a connection to China, whether that be first, second generation, they moved here themselves. I think often that can be a part of it, which is great. They obviously have a advantage because they speak the language, they know the culture, they have a network there. I'm really passionate. I think it's really important that those people still have the opportunity to do that, but I'm really passionate about trying to bring people in who might not necessarily have any sort of China experience, right? So I think that for a lot of times those people, the motivation really is the size of the market opportunity. Like we talked about at the start, there isn't the opportunity in Australia. It's limited opportunity and how you can grow, right? So
Yeah.
Really like I've been working with a company recently who's a health tech company, and they've literally had someone in China approach them. This is one of the Nexus participants. They had someone in China approach them and say, "We want to buy your technology." They went to China. They went to a factory. They met with the suppliers. They went for a dinner. They had the whole cultural experience, and then they came back and were like, "We don't really know what to do next, right? Like, this feels great, but also there is an enormous cultural barrier, and we don't know what we don't know." So they've jumped on the Nexus program to kind of validate that, to learn more about how to do business, how to get their product ready for that market. And now they're going to Nanjing and Tianjin next month, and they've got a much more kind of controlled environment to help support that growth. So I think maybe some of the people on the program have already kind of acknowledged there's someone who works in manufacturing. Again, it's huge manufacturing industry in China, the biggest in the world, right? So again, it's market opportunity. So I think, aside from the diaspora part, the biggest thing is market opportunity. People saying that is the biggest market. Now, I think I was with the trade commissioner for Shanghai last year, and on March when I went to visit, and he said to me, and I keep thinking about this, that often when it comes to scaling your business, the biggest risks are the biggest rewards, right? So China is an enormous market. If you do it well, it's really hard to do, right?
Yeah.
From someone in Australia that doesn't speak the language, that doesn't have any knowledge of the culture. So I think a lot of people see that, but it's just how do we get there, right? And how do we, I guess, me and you and numerous other people as like AKS as ecosystem builders and connectors, how do we make that easier for both sides? I think that's kind of what our job is, really, is to make that an easier process for people.
Yeah, totally agree. We should provide. I guess that's the reason this podcast, was we plan to do this podcast, try to bridge the information gap here. Another question related to the company you work with, or even what you observed is, what do you think the largest misconception, like you have been working with the Chinese side, and also you have been to China. So what do you think is the largest misconception in terms of there's a lot, but like in terms of the innovation ecosystem?
Yeah, I think it's probably that I think people assume that when they get there, it's going to be very closed off. Okay, so I think people are going to think that they think that due to, I say, like the kind of media lens that's portrayed with China, I think people think that they're going to get there and it's going to be very standoffish. It's going to be very kind of walled. There's going to be a kind of like closed communication loop. I think a big part of that is also due to the formality of the ways of doing business.
Yeah.
In China, like there's a lot of formality, right? And it takes lot to understand. And I'm only just starting to. I'm very early in my learning journey still. So I think because of that, people kind of think that it's not going to be as welcoming. It's going to be a bit cold. It's going to be very business. It's going to be very focused on, transactions and money, and it's much warmer, I think, doing business over there, what I've experienced. So I think that's probably the biggest misconception. And I think that just is through experience, is through kind of what we see. I found the people in China just so amazingly welcoming and warm, and I feel like that's not what you always hear about, right, on the news, or it's not what you always experience maybe in a formal business setting.
That's right.
When you don't know what you're walking into. So, what do you? I'm keen to hear what you think. I mean, like you say, there's a lot of misconceptions.
Oh, there's lots of misconceptions in different areas, but I guess for the innovation space, I guess one of the things I was thinking is it's more around like everything there you need to have a what they call the guanxi or connections. So there's no other value based kind of the transaction there. But I guess that's probably overstate. I guess in every country there's a relationship play in the transaction. It's just the the extent it goes to. So I guess it really depends, and it really depends on the value your startup, your product actually provided to your customer.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great example, right? Like definitely, I remember hearing stories about people saying you had to go and buy exorbitant gifts for people to get any sort of anywhere in China at all, right? I remember someone telling me a story a couple of years ago of, oh yeah, you got to go buy someone a Rolex before they take a meeting with you, and that's kind of the culture. And I'm like, I have not experienced anything like that. I don't know where that story came from, but it doesn't feel like it's a realistic kind of perception of what actually happens there, right? So
That's right. That's right. And also, China is not a, China is big. So every province, every city, or even every county, they are different. So the culture there will be slightly different. So when you talk to someone about let's just say the dining culture or drinking cultures, then that will be different from someone who actually from a different place. So I guess it's more about the experience and open-minded. Then everything should be all right.
that's exactly it, right? I think you got to like look at countries like India's exactly the same as well. I do a lot of work in India, but countries like India and China is basically like, imagine you're traveling through Europe. Yes, there might be a similar federal and national sort of, politics and
That's right.
economy, but like culturally, it's basically like traveling to different countries. The food, the ways of working are so different. The dialect so different. People have a very different way of doing business and existing and living, and so yeah, I think that's one of the things that I really noticed as well. Traveling, I traveled through I think 5 provinces,
Okay.
and just to notice the differences as I went through the country was amazing, and I can't wait to go back. Honestly, I talk about it every day. It's just I can't remember a country I've been to for a long time, maybe apart from India, where I've got such a thirst to return.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, considering time, maybe we do some quick short question and answers.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. So first, probably you've been to several. You just mentioned you've been to several cities in China. So which one is your favorite?
It's too hard to answer that question. Look, I loved Beijing because it was the first place I went to, and I think you always get a bit of primacy bias. And standing in Tiananmen Square, looking across at the Forbidden City was
Yeah.
kind of exactly how I imagined China was going to be when I was that 8-year-old
Okay.
child. But I loved Sichuan, so I loved Chongqing, Chengdu. I had the best food I've ever had. Um, I love spicy food, so I absolutely love the
Nice.
food in both. And Chongqing is just a crazy city. Like it's if you think if you're like an innovation and futurist, it is an amazing city for that. And then I'll say one last thing, which was Xi'an. Like I was talking to my fiance yesterday, and we were talking about the conversation was if we ever moved to China, where would you move to? And that's what Xi'an was the place that we said. It felt like it
I
was.
love Xi'an as well.
It's just such a nice, relaxing. It's big, but it's still easy. The food's amazing. The people were so warm. I feel like lifestyle there would be amazing. So it's too hard to answer with one. Sorry.
All right, nice, nice. And Dickie, I need to bring you to a Sichuan restaurant in Melbourne. So my favorite one next time.
Done. Amazing.
Cool. All right. So second, so what's your most favorite Chinese tech company?
Oh, that is a great question. Um, Look, I mean, it's a very obvious answer I feel here, but like I'm reading about DeepSeek at the minute, like every day. I'm really curious to see how that plays out in terms of what they're doing with disrupting, yeah, the bigger US, the US companies. So that I feel like I'm reading so I've got a newsletter which reports on global. Global tech stories, and I feel like every single day there's a story coming out of DeepSeek. So I'm
Oh,
really curious. I was trying to get myself a meeting there when I was in Shanghai, but it never happened. But maybe you can hook me up next time.
yeah, we are organizing a trip to China in November.
Excellent. Let's do it.
All right. So if you have a magic wand, so what's the change you hope for in the Australian innovation system?
I think well, there's so many, right? I feel like the first thing would be parity for gender within the funding space. I would love to see female founders funded to the same level that male founders are funded. It's currently at 0.7%, I think, of the total funding. That'd be amazing. So we actually see a innovation funding ecosystem which is the same as what you see across the rest of the world. Sorry, into the rest of the country in terms of the economy. So that would be the first thing. Second thing will be more Australian companies going into different markets beyond the US and the UK. So more people working in China, India, Southeast Asia. I'm obviously pretty biased on that one because that's my job. It means I've done a good job if that's the case. And then I think the other thing would just be more international investors funding Australian companies. I think last year the stats were saying that 66% of funding rounds had an international investor, which is amazing. Though I feel like I would love to see, I would love to see people look at Australia and see it as being an extremely lucrative market to invest in. That investment will obviously then supercharge our ecosystem. It will mean there's more funding, more startups getting funded, more startups growing globally. So they're kind of the three things I'd wave. Is that too many? Is like three wishes?
No, loved it. I loved it. So everyone and each of the change you mentioned, I love that. Nice. And okay, so finally, so if you want to give just one tip to the startup founder looking to China or Asia in general, so what's the tip?
Go there. I think you can't understand a place until you've been to a place. I just think it's absolutely impossible. And go with an open mind. Go with a curious mind. Talk to people. Eat the local food. Experience the local culture. I just think be really open. The biggest thing I always think people are scared from day one before they go somewhere, and then when they do, it's like. I get people calling me up all the time saying, especially when it comes to India, people call me up saying, how do I do things right? How do I say things right? How do I act correctly? How do I act appropriate? It's like, if you try, 99.9% of people will love that. Yeah. That's all they want, right? Like, it's very hard to really offend people. People understand that you're not the expert, right? If you come in with an open mind, a smile, you act friendly, you act curious, you want to invest in that, and you seem to be trying, people will appreciate that. So I think it's go to the places and just be open and be curious, and people will always receive that well.
Amazing. All right. So thank you so much, Dickie, for sharing these valuable insights. And to our listeners, if you are interested in learning more about this topic, please reach out. And if you want to connect to Dickie, you can find him on LinkedIn with the name Dickie Currer. Stay tuned for more episodes in our series of Australian China innovation. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.